Hello, this is Ukraine 101, a podcast in which two Ukrainians have a frank conversation. In this episode, we'll talk about our initial reactions to the big invasion, demonstrations and fundraising efforts. We'll share how do we cope with the war. My name is Dana, my co-host is Karyna. We invite you to walk in our shoes for the next hour.
You're listening to Co-Station.
What do you feel like most days?
Even today wasn't like this when I woke up, and I suppose most of the days it's a bit more doom and gloom. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
How you
two
doing?
days. Yeah. I'm actually today just mostly tired, which usually doesn't really allow me to connect with whatever I'm actually experiencing. So that's a very,
Yeah.
very good protection against actually reflecting on most of your feelings and emotions. Sometimes you do run the risk of getting so tired that you just kind of like are having a breakdown and like crying and can't really explain why. That's like that. There are the two extremities of this, right? But I think what we wanted to talk about today is exactly that. How do Ukrainians feel what their day to day looks like, right?
Yeah.
Living abroad.
Yeah.
Dwell on that a little bit. 2.5 years into.
Yeah, sort of how it all started here with the big invasion, and what you, dear listener, can do to make your fellow Ukrainian feel a bit better.
Yeah, it's basically a how to Ukraine 1-on-1.
So cool.
We are Ukraine 1-on-1 podcast. But yeah, how has how have you learned about the? Oh my God, I was gonna ask a very loaded question. How did the news of the big invasion starting reach you? Where were you?
Yeah,
What were you up
I
to?
was actually thinking about it just today. It's kind of an odd story because a relative of mine, my sister moved to Vienna, I think just about a month before the big invasion, for unrelated reasons. And in February, I was with her, and I was sort of helping her move, and I think we were doing like IKEA trips and whatnot. And I went back to the Netherlands on the 20th, about that time, right? And then 24th hit, and I think the first week or so, was just panic, right? And like to be honest, my only memory is my sister and me talking about when are we going back, right? And I think it was the only thing on our minds. Well, that, right? And suppose on the 24th, Thursday, wasn't it?
Yeah,
Because
it was Thursday indeed.
I took a day off. I went to there was a protest or a demo near a Russian embassy in The Hague.
Mm.
I was there. My partner was there, right, and lots of friends, just acquaintances. I think the first few days is kind of this. I don't know. It was just like I don't remember sleeping, to be honest. Right?
No.
It was this continuous stream of weird emotions, and you don't know what to do with them, and it just doesn't feel real. Um, And I mean, to be honest, right, even going to the protest, right, wasn't like a conscious decision. Like I want to go there and I'm going to show them. It was more of I don't know how can I cope with it otherwise.
Yeah.
And then sort of a few other things happened, but we can get back to that in a moment. What happened? Like, how did you face it?
Ooh, I recall waking up quite early because my adrenaline level had been like super high probably for
Mm-hmm.
days before that. So I was awake and it was early morning and my heart was just kind of pounding already, like nothing had happened yet at
Mm-hmm.
that point. But then I remember opening my eyes and thinking, I don't want to check my phone. I don't want to check my phone. Do I start a normal day and like
Mm-hmm.
do I make my coffee and then I like check my phone, or do I check my phone first thing? And then I check my phone and it was actually the message from my sister. Oh, sorry, I'm gonna be way more detailed. And she says, I remember I sometimes go back to that message and it said on Instagram, Karyna, the war has started.
Mm-hmm.
And the weirdest thing about all of this is that my sister is member of the Ukrainian military since 2020 July. So that marks actually 4 years around now, since it's now July 2024. And she referred to it as the war has started.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And And that was really like it was really awful to read because just months before that, we were meeting up in Ukraine, and obviously she had been to what we were referring to as the war at that point in time, which is
Mhm.
basically what most Europeans and Westerners in general, and especially the rest of the world, kind of didn't even notice that was going on,
Mhm.
and that was really surreal. But I knew exactly what that meant. She was at that point probably like 30 kilometers away from the Russian border, and it was, of course, the breakthrough of the Russian troops through the border was the onset was very very kind of like quick
Where was
and
she stationed? Like.
Chuhuyev.
Mhm.
So that's military airport. Not sure to which extent I'm actually okay to share this, but okay. Well, she was back then stationed at Chuhuyev. It ended up being occupied for just like
Mhm.
hours or days after the invasion started, and then
And just direction wise, right? So give a sense to the listener.
yeah, that's a very good one. That's in near Kharkiv
Mhm.
city, which is basically a major Ukrainian city that is, as we speak right now, July 2024, is being actually attacked and bombed pretty bad with all kinds of things. So yeah, so it's pretty close to the border, and she uh, she was there, and I knew exactly like the
Mhm.
meaning of like the big war, the big invasion. So I like first couple of minutes I was just kind of terrified, and I actually hadn't woken up my husband until like a few minutes later. But I was just basically running around the house like having a breakdown and like
Mhm.
I think like screaming without realizing I was screaming and things like that. And it was really awful. But then just like I think multiple hundreds, if not thousands, of Ukrainians that already were in the Netherlands at that point in time, it was kind of my natural instinct to just like go to the Russian embassy and just like tell them that they basically did the worst thing ever. But
Mhm.
and then I started kind of checking on like my mom and my dad and
So you check the news before you check the messages from her, from them.
well, I just got the message from my sister
Right. Okay.
basically, and then of course, like I realized that probably my sister were gonna have better things to do than text
Right.
me.
Right.
So,
Sorry,
yeah, I
really
mean,
busy
sure,
right now.
I was,
She'll text you in a bit.
yeah, I mean, in hindsight, I asked her like how
Mhm.
things were going, and she said that I had the only things I had time for is put on my shoes and grab my weapon basically, which
Mhm.
is like you can like no matter what, like the world might be
Yeah.
ending, but you
Yeah.
cannot lose your weapon
And the
in the
shoes.
Ukrainian military. Yeah, the shoes are just practical because it was end of the winter.
Mhm.
But in hindsight, it seemed so surreal, but it was just I just remember feeling like terrified, and I was really like by the time you're reading this message, you're
Mhm.
you're also like this extremely creepy thought enters your brain like, is she still alive by the time I'm reading this, and so it was yeah, it was scary. I'm trying not to swear just yet, just yet for
Like how
let's
how deep are
let's
we in?
let's
Yeah.
give it a few minutes. So then I just like I checked on my mom and my dad, and I said, well, life has ended, that's it. I was like, and they were like, no, like, no, they will break their teeth against us, which I
Mhm.
think like the truth ended up being somewhere in between, right? But I kind of was also shocked that they were in the
I mean,
middle of
that's some
it.
perseverance. Yeah.
Yeah, and they were just like, "No, we're gonna be fine." Like, and I'm like, "But you're in the middle of it, and I'm sitting here all safe. Like, how are
And
you
I
gonna
am
be
screaming. Yeah.
And I'm screaming. I'm pretty sure I went on for like 30 seconds straight, just like appalled. And I know that for you, perhaps also the beginning of the big invasion also meant a logistical question of like, how do I put my family into safety, right? Because if I'm not
Mhm.
mistaken, what did you proceed to
Yeah.
do
Yeah. So,
after that?
I mean,
Yeah,
that's kind of the story that I promised to get back to.
yeah,
Um. Um. Yeah. It was not clear to me. Sort of what do we do now, right? I think it took me like a long, long while for the realization to settle that this is actually happening, right? That this is real. And well, I say like it's done, right? But to be honest, now and again, right? I look at the news and I'm like, fuck, like, is this real?
yeah,
And now and again, it doesn't seem that way.
yeah.
Um, yeah, and then sort of, I guess I was just trying to keep myself grounded. I remember, I don't know if it was the first day or second, sort of one of the first days, right, of the invasion. I was at the protest, right, and a pal of mine, shout out to Martin, was coming from Amsterdam to join me at the demo, and bizarre story, right? When kind of like we were there, like near the demo, right, and then there, like the rain is just coming down, right? It's miserable, it's cold, um, and people want food, right? And there's nothing sort of in like around the demo bit, right?
Was it
Uh,
at the Dam Square?
no. That's so that's still in
Oh,
the Hague,
that
right?
was
That's
the
near the
Hague. Oh,
embassy.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, like
yeah.
it's the embassy
Yeah,
part of town, right?
true,
There's not much going on
true,
there.
true.
And he sort of ended up being late, right? And he just grabs sort of I texted him, hey, can you pick up some stuff like here, right? And he picks up like 6 wraps or so. And he comes around, and by that time we've already had like lunch somewhere else, right? And then they forced us. Maybe it was actually the first day. God, I don't remember. Um, they force us away from the Russian embassy, and I think there's also some confusion, and people are sort of eventually they kind of converge on going to the camera. And sort of you can't actually be near the second chamber, right? You have to be like kind of on the opposite side of the street, and I think you also weren't allowed to be loud. It's bizarre, right? And I'm just standing there, and they like and I have this 6 wraps in my hand, and they're all soggy, right? Like the rain is like, what to do now?
Well,
I
I
think I
mean,
also try.
I'm almost trying to say, well, at least you were capable of being hungry on that day, because that was kind of like a thing, a challenge that I know a lot of people weren't sleeping, weren't eating, they were just online all the time, and
I mean, I'm terminally aligned as I am, so
yeah, that's true.
um, yeah, and I think it ended up with me realizing that I just can't stay out for any longer, right? And like I had whatever snack we were supposed to, and the wraps ended just being used in this. So I went out and I just gave them away like to the people who were staying at the demo. I remember a lot of very confused faces. I think there were a few sort of Dutch international folks there that were really confused. Uh, but
About the wraps or
yeah,
about the
no, just me giving out food, right? They were like,
just the entire situation.
this was going on, right? And
Yeah.
I remember my memory of it being like, oh, this is normal. 2014 we did the same thing. Right?
Oh,
Business
yeah,
as
yeah, yeah.
usual.
Yeah, right, right. Did
Um,
you so you're right now referring, of course, to the
Revolution of
Maidan
Dignity, yeah.
Revolution of Dignity, indeed. So for the folks watching, it is a major event when the power was usurped by a dictator in Ukraine, which is why we know, whenever the argument is being given to us, oh, Russia, it's hopeless. There's a dictator in the at power. We're like, oh, really? Is it hopeless?
Like
Because we've
unfixable.
yeah, impossible to fix, right? So that's also went probably largely unnoticed, and especially in the context that it was 10 years ago. But were you at
Yeah,
the
like not
Maidan?
all the time. I think I was
No.
just finishing high school.
Yeah.
But I do have a few memories of visiting, right? I think like this particular recall, right, was to the time my dad and um, I don't remember what we were doing exactly, to be honest. It was just moving some supplies in Makharovsky Cathedral, like sort of up the street from the Defense Square.
Yeah.
Yeah, but sort of just this feeling that you're helping random people, right? And you don't really know them, but you have something to share, and they obviously need some, right? And then you're just like, yeah, go ahead, right? It's not a big deal at all. Yeah, I guess that was the first day gone.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
you
then
remember those soggy wraps?
hell
You know,
yeah.
but it's just sometimes it's really random things that you can end up remembering.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
also just telling us a story just today, right? That somehow I had like a shit ton of what you call it, hair ties with me. I had like 5 or I don't know, right? And for some bizarre reason, there were a lot of people at that demo who somehow needed hair ties. And I was like, here you go, it's not, no problem.
Out of all things you'd need, yeah. Maybe it was something like deep inside your memory that you're like, my experience with demonstrations and all kinds of like
I
things
need a
that
hair tie.
and an air type for sure. Let's zoom in on that feeling of kind of unconditional, like willingness to help
Mhm.
people whom you don't know once you're united by this big idea. Do you do anything of that kind these days, Donna?
Um, I mean, it's a bit less. Happens less often, right?
Hmm.
Um, I think like big demonstrations are still like a moment when you feel part of the whole. To be honest, right, every time I sort of donate some money to a particular fundraiser, right, and then it ended up being closed, right, I'm like, hells yeah, like I did that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or like we did that, or sort of like me part of the bigger thing, right? And
Yeah.
particularly
A drop in the ocean, right? That's what we refer to in Ukraine.
also like, but when your friends are doing the fundraiser, right, and you're like, oh yes, I am doing like, oh, let me calculate, like, well, 1/30 of the total, like, go
Uh,
me.
yeah, no, but even like 130, I consider that like quite mighty. There are these fundraisers
Hmm.
that and we'll probably we should
Yeah,
probably
we'll get back to
clarify
that
like on
later.
this national like nationwide hobby which is called fundraising.
Like giving your money to strangers, love
Yeah.
that.
You're like, oh yeah, I mean if I open my Ukrainian bank account,
Hmm.
it's like army pickup, yes. um Prosthetics, yes. Someone needs cat food for a pet shelter of
Hmm.
cats evacuated from somewhere eastern Ukraine? Yes. 3 times. Like, and
For
and
each cat, there
and
is.
there's just like this bank account that doesn't make any sense. It's just like out there for charity. And so
Hmm.
and it has some kind of like reward system built into it.
Yeah.
So I keep kind of getting the same badge, right? So like Ukrainian fintech is like it's out of this world. I actually got this bank account by means of getting on a call with a support person at 11 p.m. on a Sunday, and I just kind of initiated
Hmm.
the creation of the bank account like a few hours earlier. I had not had any bank account in that bank whatsoever, but I was just like I was already living abroad, and I was like,
Hmm.
okay, I really do need this Ukrainian bank account if I want to do any type of donation. So it was the idea in itself was that this will be for donation. So then
Hmm.
it's 11 p.m. Sunday, and then the support agent says, uh, Mrs. Arian, if you are available, I was like, yeah, I mean, why wouldn't I be available?
I'm
I'm
like,
in bed, but
GG, yeah, yeah. Let's go.
and they just call me and they verify that the whatever piece of ID I had
Yeah, yeah.
actually looks like what I look like
Hmm.
to a certain extent. And I was like,
This is sorry, Nike is already on, like.
oh well, I obviously woke up like this. I didn't do anything to myself, but it worked like a charm. And then suddenly I had this bank account, and suddenly I was like topping it up, and it's just super easy. And then the only thing it does is like so being extremely like techie, right? Like it's
Mhm.
like everything, like all the transactions are instantaneous. You get like this instant stats. You can like give your card a really like cool like theme.
Yeah.
It has a mascot. It has a mascot of this cat, and this cat keeps telling me, "Very well done. You donated to charity again." And I'm like, "Yeah, that's the only reason why I have this bank account." But I think it's important. So you mentioned fundraising, right? So that's like we're moving away from like this face to face helping
Yeah.
people in need to more like going out there on the internet and maybe trusting friends and trusting friends of friends
But
and
also started quite early, right? Like, so
yeah,
I think Come Back Alive was founded in 2013, right? And
correct.
they
Yeah.
maybe weren't as known as they are now, but the fundraiser appeared also like instantaneous because there's also this sense, yeah, I mean, sort of, sure, countries they already can, right? But there are some needs that will take more time, and if you can help out now, right, and if you can fix it now,
Yeah.
that is it.
Come back alive. That's an important one. Will I be speaking on behalf of both of us if I say that if you by any chance want to donate any amount of money for Ukraine, there is no better way than supporting Come Back Alive. And
There's
if
no easier way.
yeah, no easier way. That's true. They are easy to find online. So it's just Come Back Alive. First hit on Google. Be sure that the link looks legit. Like ask your any Ukrainian like whom you know that like to confirm that the link actually
I'm
looks the
trying
way
to
it should.
remember. They also have like a domain. I think the domain is not Come Back Alive anymore. It's someone else, right?
It's back in alive.
Back
Yeah,
Alive. Okay,
back
yeah,
in
yeah.
alive. Yeah, and that's like it came up in one of their
Hmm.
public relations kind of conversations, and they're like, "Don't ask," and I was like, "Yeah, it's yeah,
Hmm.
domain names. We all know how that goes." But yeah, so it's a very good investment, I would say, um
Public security.
into more prosperous and secure Europe in the long term. Because whenever the war does not reach Europe, everybody wins. But yeah, so that's one of the organizations. What I think, I don't know to which extent you're familiar with the Come Back Alive as a as an
Oh, yeah, I
organization?
mean, so that's also one of the
Yeah.
first things that were keeping me sane the first days, right?
Yeah.
Because they were organizing this, I'm not sure, nothing about Plava, right?
Yeah.
Like the first ones, and I mean, it was almost like a lullaby, right? Like I couldn't fall asleep otherwise, and like I was just anxious, shaky, right? And then like Taras Chmud comes on this. I don't think it's not really a podcast, right? It's just more.
It's like a podium, like a very democratic way of just kind of getting updated on
Yeah,
what's
I
the.
was going for like radio thing where like
No, there is only a radio format. So, but
yeah, yeah,
he would be like, it was Twitter Spaces, if I'm not
yeah, sure,
mistaken.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yes,
yeah.
yes,
So it
yes,
was like they just invite this head of the. I think he's officially head of
yeah,
the
yes.
foundation. So Come Back Alive is a foundation by now. It started as a kind of also charity project, just wanting to help the Ukrainian military in 2014. Now they grew.
Yeah, I mean, you know their history better than I do, right? So
I'm not sure.
okay,
All I know
we're
is that some
just
really great quotes were born in there.
yeah, 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 absolutely. Oh hell yeah.
Yeah. So
Uh,
listening to this helped you. What else? What else kept you sane? Or nothing, and you just lost
yeah,
your
I mean,
sanity.
yeah, I just went
You're
off
just
the
insane.
rails. That was it.
Right?
Like I
Yeah.
clipped that, and then
I
there's
will.
nothing afterwards. Yeah, also I remember. I think I was going through some sort of CBT sessions, and CBT being cognitive behavioral therapy, and yeah, I think that also like that really went off the rails, right? Because I think I went there with some personal issues, and then suddenly my issues became, yeah, I mean the world is ending, what the fuck do I do? And I think we spent a couple of sessions just talking about politics. It was really helping me, nor it was them. And I was
Oh, I
like,
remember that
yeah,
story
yeah, and I was
indeed.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, okay, cool. I think we're gonna
Yeah.
wrap this up here. And they were also understandable, right? I think looking back at it now, uh, that was. It was a very humane way, right, to interact because I think they were really trying to connect and it was really working out. And I guess in the end, it was like, yeah, okay, cool. I mean, hope you just can cope with it in some other way. But also,
Yeah.
there was also no time, right? Because you spend all your energy and time on someone else.
Yeah.
And still in that period, right? I went again to Vienna because my sister was turning 18. And yeah, sorry about that. This is one of the crappiest birthdays I can imagine.
How? Oh, on which date
I think it
did she
was
turn 18?
early March. Like
Yeah. So, are you trying to suggest that you don't remember your
I
sister's
do, but I'm not sure
birthday?
whether she would be happy with me disclosing it publicly.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Well, that's yeah. I have respect for that. I was trying to think like, is she gonna be upset because we'll know her like horoscopy sign and gonna assume a bunch of things about
No,
her?
no, but I do like send a private data, and they would
Yeah.
like to
No, no,
know
no,
whether.
no. Understandable. I have respect for that. But yeah, right. So that's the like bizarre thing that like suddenly birthdays started coming up,
And
trips
it's
that you
sort of
had
like life,
planned.
life seems to continue, and it just like it doesn't compute. Like this is not the world in which these things happen in the past, right?
Exactly. No, and then you're like, birthdays, trips, fun things. Am I
Vacations, yeah.
supposed to just like move on and do them? Like the
Mhm.
thing that was the worst, I think, at that moment in time is like realizing that you had tickets and hotels booked, and you're like, I just
Yeah, I never plan my vacations, right? So it's supposed to be an issue for
and you're like, I'm just gonna go into a different city to check my Twitter feed
me.
nonstop, right? That's like, yeah, but
I
it's
gotta be healthy.
sorry,
Gotta be healthy.
gotta be healthy, gotta change context, gotta
Yeah, I
log
mean, like
off.
it's a different window into the internet. Obviously different outlook.
Yeah, let's see what kind of recommendations you're gonna get. Maybe gonna get some, French content by
Oh.
going into France. But that's like one of the things that I also wanted to maybe touch upon today, right? Because this feeling of like never really being 100% like, in um tuning into whatever good is happening out there.
Mhm.
Like I don't know to which extent you're recognizing this, but whenever life like sucks, like I have some kind of task at work that's upsetting me because like I don't feel like I can do it, and I have this entire like imposter thing going on, or like I'm not feeling too well. I'm like, well, good. That's in line with like the world ending, because like
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
how
yeah, yeah, yeah.
2.5 years later, I'm
Yeah.
still very much like that. But whenever something good is going on, I'm like,
Oh,
oh, this
excuse
is
me.
wrong.
Is this supposed to be the case?
Yeah, this is wrong. I should I should
Can someone
not.
check from this, please? Like,
Yeah, this is not real. I shouldn't be feeling this. Um, and that's like so upsetting because our life has been stolen from us.
Mm,
That's what it comes down to.
yeah.
No. Do you like how do you feel in the moments of like conventional fun and joy? Like when everyone around you is celebrating, woo, the Netherlands won against Turkey in a soccer freaking
Yeah.
match. You're like, yeah, sure.
So cool.
Yeah. Drink your beer.
Yeah, I think the sort of there are a few episodes when it became particularly prominent that sort of there is like a rift right between the world that I live in, the world that people around me live in. Um, Somehow, I think just because like the first weeks, right, I was mostly in touch with my closest circle, right, and we were mostly on the same page. So it didn't seem to be as much. And even like the birthday right, was of my sister, so she was also in this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
So I guess it just felt weird to both of us to really like, do a celebration. Um, and it ended up just sort of just acknowledging the fact that yes, yeah, like it's this date and time, and it's cool. Let's try to move on.
Yeah.
Um, I think I was just trying to keep myself busy. And yeah, then a few weeks passed, and after that, my family was in the meantime slowly moving west. Right, so they were going from Kyiv, and oh, that's another thing that happened. Yeah, I remember being on a call with my brother, and he was also like in his early teens at that time. Um, and we're in a call, and we're just having a chat, right, and it seems all normal. And at some point, like I hear a boom in the background. He says, "Oh, sorry. Yes, I guess the Russians are bombing again. I'm just gonna go in the basement." Um,
Awful.
I bawled at that moment, right? It's not something that's. I mean, I guess I'm crying now too, right? So it's just not something I can handle well. Um, and that's the part that seems surreal, right? That um, the people who were there, right? You expect everything that to change instantaneously, right? But then they are still the people you love, right? And the people still you care about. Um, and the setting now just seems bizarre, or it is bizarre, right?
Yeah.
It was, I think, you can probably check the date right for that, but it was near the time when Russians were encircling Kyiv, and they were kind of, yeah, I think they were approaching sort of Fastiv, like, which is southwest of Kyiv.
And quite far out, right? Like that was
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's about like 60K perhaps away from the city
yeah.
border. Um, and they were slowly moving west, right? Because there were also fuel issues and whatnot.
Yeah.
Um, and at some point, my parents also called me, and I was I think big part of just my thoughts at that time was just thinking, okay, like what do I need to take with me? Like where do you go? Um, And then my mom calls and she's like, "No, you're not fucking moving anywhere. You're coming to pick up your brother and the dog, right? And you'll take care of them." So yeah, I think that was also it was like about 20th of March somewhere around that time. Uh,
How many people approached you by then asking, well, or kind of stating, I hope your loved ones are safe?
yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah.
how did you respond to that?
Um, I guess I didn't really have energy to uh, do anything that would resemble real communication. It was like, yeah, thanks.
Oh, yeah, yeah. It was an
Like
uphill
sort
battle.
of they're fucking not right. Like I don't know what
Yeah,
like
yeah,
I understand that you're doing it out of like courtesy and politeness, right? But
yeah. Well, we are here to be annoying, AF,
yeah,
right? We're not here to be polite. We don't have energy for that stuff. Like I'm barely restraining myself from swearing all the time, right there on the camera. But I think one of the important things in here is that it's also a lesson that we learned, right? So I appreciated every single person that came. The reason why I asked this is
hmm
because I kind of
yeah, yeah.
started reflecting on this question a lot after that. I
Sorry for not
appreciated.
asking you back.
No, no worries. I'm not here to be polite, but I think yeah, one of the things that I realized is that I appreciated every single person that showed at least some kind of compassion. It could have been as much as like a nonverbal one, just an expression that changes. And I see that
hmm
it's too painful for them to like they have so much sympathy that they can't even muster like to
hmm
any energy to like put a few words together. And like and besides what you say, it's like I think if I may refer to a book that we both read, and I know that
Yeah,
you
yeah,
might
yeah.
have disliked it,
That's
right?
right.
It's like when you are learning about another person's like grief, and
Mhm.
it's like a distant person, and it's maybe also a distant person to even that person, and then you're like, oh wow, so terrible, right? So it's like
Mhm.
you want to sympathize with them, but it's like for as long as it's abstract to you, it's very difficult to like grasp. And there's the reason why there are philosophers, dwelling on these topics, and like we're not going to cover it today, but I thought like people do like their best effort to say like I'm really sorry, or
Mhm.
like I can't even begin to imagine, and all those things. And I was especially appreciated the question like or like I hope all your loved ones
Mhm.
are safe, right? And then you're like, or like I hope your family is safe. And I was like, well, my family right now is 40 million people. And that's how it felt, right? Like,
Mhm.
so I'm not trying to be dramatic, but I would just like say, like, would I care for like a random Ukrainian, like, woman crossing the Polish border right now with two kids at both hands and a tiny
Mhm.
backpack, like, filled with only like most essential belongings? Oh, hell yeah. I feel like she's my family, like, and I'm also
Mhm.
worried for her. And I especially do feel worried for people that are out there defending us with weapons in hands. And I think like that feeling was so unfathomably big. Like that when people ask me, I was like, do I just kind of like go and say that my family is
Mhm.
40 million people big right now, like minus the ones that are separatists and that are just basically waiting for Russia to arrive, which is like maybe
Mhm.
0.0005% of the population. And I was just like, this is just such a loaded question. And then every time I was also kind of like, I was like, do I just lie to them, or do I say like half of my family is with the military, because someone actually has to take weapons in
Mhm.
hands and protect this country, because otherwise Russians are gonna be here tomorrow, like here in Rotterdam, like right in the Netherlands. And it was also kind of demanding to like also say like, well, they aren't really, but thanks for asking, right? And that was also a lot of feelings. Like you don't know like what even to call these. Like, is it the kind of responsibility to make sure that the other person doesn't get like upset by your response to them getting
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about this interaction, right? I guess for that person, it's a way just acknowledge the fact that they see you, right? That this is happening, and um, I guess it's easier if you put it straight. If you just say, "Hey, I am sorry this is happening," and then I can also like I have a way out. I can say, "Yeah, I mean it sucks, right?" And then kind of we move on, right? Sort of this has happened. We both know that's the case, right? And
yeah.
there's no need to send thoughts and prayers.
No. Actually, I traced back my Twitter account to
Uh-huh.
like when I just first created it in 2016. And the reason why I had the urge to create it was um, because I was just so like, it was so upsetting to me to see the entire like thoughts and prayers culture that was going on. And it was like 2016. And I was trying to just even understand like what was going on at that. Probably it was in the
Mhm.
context of like, Russia and Syria destroying Syria,
Mhm.
Russia destroying, eastern parts of Ukraine at that time. MH17 crash not really going anywhere, like investigation not
Mhm.
really going anywhere, and like this entire like sense of like hopeless propaganda ridden, news space that was just like, and the fact that politicians and institutions were just like, oh, thoughts and prayers, and you're like,
Yeah,
really?
yeah. I
Like
mean,
at least like rather like say we're unable to do anything, but we're
we're
feeling
very
for you.
concerned,
Yeah, we're very concerned, deeply concerned. Yeah.
extremely concerned.
For the context, Ukrainians get very, very annoyed whenever another international organization just
Impotence, yeah.
shows full on impotence by writing, "We are extremely concerned," and you're like, "What's gonna be next?" Like, extremely, very much, ultra, hyper duper concerned
Max
on
1000.
steroids, times 9,000.
Yeah, but then sort of just again thinking like, okay, so these were the things, right, that weren't as cool. But at the same time, I do remember my friends reaching out and saying, "Hey, so what can I do? Like, what can I help? Like, how can I help?" Right? I think that really made me feel connected to them when I said, well, sort of, I don't fucking know, right? So, like, what I'm doing is I'm going to the demo. If you want, you can join. And they did. Right?
Yeah.
And to me, that was big.
Yeah.
Um,
Same. People being there for you instead of like, enjoying the spring. I think that spring completely like went past me without like noticing that seasons were changing and everything else. Like I appreciated that
then
people
you
were
felt
just
like
there.
a lot of months just turned to that
Yeah,
February.
we were having this inside joke with the Ukrainians, right? That is like 120 seconds of February because
Yep.
we just couldn't believe that in this nightmare of a life, you suddenly see trees in bloom, and then they are exchanged by like this
Yep.
beautiful greenery, and you're like, oh, it's summer. What? Like life goes by.
Yeah, there is another layer of it, right? Where, because in Ukrainian, February is Lutý. It's a good way to translate that.
Furious. I think is
Yeah.
it or is it
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
Furious is somewhere close, right?
Yeah, but
To
it's also like goodness.
like it's almost cruel, no?
No, no, it's more like and also there's something of like steadfastness in it, right?
Mhm.
Like yeah, it's hard. So it's basically I think that that month is called Lute, which is basically furious, is because it can get pretty frosty in Ukraine around that time of the
Well, I mean,
year.
like
It
back
can-
when the months were named, I think now it's just a little bit, but
yeah,
yeah. So there is another layer of it when you feel like the month that is called Furious, right? Like just drags on and on and on,
yeah,
and then every day feels like that.
yeah.
Um,
Oh, for sure. What?
so I mean,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna ask like, what can your friends do for you now that we are not as actively going to demonstrations? Like, what can they do for you when they think about that,
Yeah.
and maybe they don't like feel comfortable asking because time. But
I was just let's come back to that in a moment, right?
yeah,
Because there are still a few anecdotes that I haven't
sure.
spilled.
I love anecdotes. Yeah.
But what I really wanted to ask you is, so I mean that was kind of my first month, right? And how did that go for you? Because you said like sort of this was the first day.
Oh yeah.
Um,
First day multiplied by 100. that was a
rinse
that's
and
what my,
repeat.
my first few months. No, I actually like as I said, there were plans. I'm a planner person, right? So suddenly things like birthdays and vacations started happening, and I was like, right, like I have to. And the nice part about birthdays and vacations is that in a lot of cases you're doing them with your friends that are either Ukrainian or just being close to you, or you're doing them with your partner who also like is in the context and like goes through this
Hmm.
pain. Like that's very much the case with my partner. He's very Ukrainian minded.
Yeah,
s-
maybe the most
I
Ukrainian
think he's
foreigner
the
I know.
most Ukrainian minded person. I have theories why he's like that. He's Dutch for the context, but he's very Ukrainian at heart. I think for me it was getting out of this little bubble, like the comfortable bubble, and like having a little bit of grief, but also a little bit of a celebration. Like when the first like corporate party was happening, and I was gonna face like 300 people just partying, like nothing is going on. That's where I think the realization that like life has split,
Hmm.
and it will never like go back to normal for as long as
Russia exists.
Russia exists. Yeah, and Russia does what it does right now. I was like, this is never gonna be normal. And then so you're maybe having a drink, and then you're maybe like, oh, it would be actually like sounds like a really good idea to have 10 more drinks, so I just like don't control the situation at
Blackout.
all
Yeah.
anymore. Like a blackout sounds like a really great scenario in this case. Which again, like I recognize that I'm a little bit older, but maybe anyone who's a bit younger and like is experiencing the effects from alcohol from the first couple of times in their lives, like I can really see how this can impact your life in ways where you're like going through emotions that are just, as you said, like not even every therapist, not every person in the mental health area of expertise is able to handle these conversations, because usually for people going through a work experience, there are people who are also trained in this type of conversations. So it was like, yeah, these are extraordinary things, and now I'm going through ordinary situations, like anyone in their late 20s, and there's like this corporate party and everyone's having fun, and the only thing I can think of is that probably there was while I was not checking my phone, something
Something
awful
happened.
happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I realized that, and I probably will be lying if I say that within the last 2.5 years there was a single experience where I was 100% able to like
Hmm.
disconnect. Right? I think I did have these experiences. Maybe I was nearing like approaching them whenever I was like connecting to the nature and just kind of looking at like how it's kind of been there forever, like
Hmm.
especially
Touch
like
grass.
touch grass. For me, like the sense of swimming like
Hmm.
in the ocean or like in the natural waters really gives that sense of like this exists still after all we've done to each
Hmm.
other, right? So like human history has some pretty dark pages, and probably we are right now in one of these pages. And I was like, this outlived us. It will outlive us again. I'm glad it will because our
Hmm.
planet is beautiful, nature is beautiful, and that gave like a tiny little bit of like this, Spinozian like experience that you're just like this little tiny droplet
Hmm.
in the ocean, and then you're like, but other than that, yeah, I
I
mean,
mean, even that is big, right? Like the fact that you can connect with your body in that moment. Um, like that is also not a given, right? And
it's
then, I
not.
mean, like the what you were mentioning about losing the sense of hunger, right, and losing the ability to sleep. That's exactly the opposite of that, right?
Oh
When
yeah,
you just don't really experience that anymore.
yeah. That was full on. Like I think that was like a collective, realization that your body plus some adrenaline, like that's just like weird stuff. You don't want to like ever experience, but you're like, I would say that also in terms of like grief and sadness, like the first few days were way less laden with like pure grief, you know?
Yeah, I mean, like you when you grieve sort of after you go through the traumatic experience, and then
Yeah.
that was a still traumatic
We
experience
were in the
full on.
middle.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were in the middle of
like,
it. But there was also a lot like, do you remember how many memes were born in the
yeah.
first couple of days, weeks, like months? Like, do you remember that wild stuff
Mhm.
out there? I mean,
I mean, that was
uh,
also just a way to cope, right? Like,
yeah, it was a coping mechanism, totally. But that was also like, in the sense of humor and the fact that people were not yet conscious that actually like probably some of the really um, awful things that we will proceed on
hmm.
to learn about, like after the war is finished in a decisive Ukrainian victory. We are going to learn about those experiences, and we'll see that even in those full few days when we were experiencing more like, okay, where can I help, how can I be of use, right? It wasn't so much about
Hmm.
being sad. There were probably a lot of sad things going on then
Totally,
as
yeah.
well. So yeah, for me it's just basically that. And then I'm also asking myself like, should I start learning how to like live with this better, right?
Hmm.
2.5 years. And um, one of the things that I have the luxury of doing is going to Ukraine, actually, because I know not everyone is able to.
Well, going there and coming back.
Yeah, yeah, going there and coming back. Sorry for the kind of omitting that important detail. But it's like, I've heard this also from some Lebanese folks that were kind of also spectating as their country was at war
Hmm.
from abroad, right? Lebanon has a huge diaspora. It's like a
Hmm.
diaspora nation. So people were always like struggling with like looking at the war from the outside and like, oh, this is awful. Like, I cannot like um, see this anymore, the suffering. And then coming back home and then seeing that, well, actually, people are like, they're not fine, but they're
Hmm.
adapting.
Well, they do continue to leave, right? They're still there.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. The fact that not the entire country, and that's like also an important like message for our European friends. Like, we would have really loved, or like wherever you are watching this from. Sorry for assuming you're from Europe. Obviously, we're gonna have a global reach. I mean, but whenever you are learning that in Ukraine, a person might have a coffee in the morning and they might take a picture of their kid going to school for the first time, and they might be walking their dog, and they might be like maybe even having a birthday party celebration. Like, don't be surprised during the Second World War. like this entire continent still partied like hell because people really thought that they were gonna die, and there was a
And
lot
it's
of
the
booze
last
and
day you're
prostitutes
alive, yeah.
involved. So you like this whole narrative of like, oh, war, like people in a country at war, they are gonna be like sad 24/7. I mean, like if we had been that, like we probably should have just surrendered on that day one, because like as I said, our lives have already have been stolen from us. And every time I actually see people like having a cake and like taking a picture of this pretty cake and like celebrating a birthday of their kid, I'm like, bless, like happy for you, like genuinely. Like I don't think I've ever felt this genuine happiness for complete strangers. And I
Mhm.
think that brings us back to this topic of like, I'm happy for random people whom I don't even know. Lots of people are getting married. That lots of people are having babies. Like if that's what their ambition in life was, like I'm so happy that this
The war
weird,
didn't stop them. Russia didn't stop them.
yeah, and the fact that, yeah, exactly. So this ability to like um show resilience and really proceed with their dreams, that's just, I think that's amazing. And like all the
Hmm.
non-dramatic ways.
Yeah. So how did you learn to live with this? There was this whole flurry of experiences in the first few months, and then now we're a couple of years later. Um,
Yeah, well, I think same as you. Whenever I feel sad, I donate money. Whenever I feel happy, I donate money. Whenever my salary comes in, I donate money. And well, in fact, that does make me feel tiny little bit better, right? Because
Mhm.
you do feel like you're doing something good. Again, I think I'm speaking on behalf of 99% of Ukrainians that everyone does their little bit. For me, I probably would have wanted to give my time and do something, volunteer more or do more of those things. But one thing I know is that also, given we are here and we are working full time jobs, maybe it's not going to be the best use of my resources to like try to squeeze in volunteering hours. So that's why
Mhm.
I just kind of like I just basically give away the time that I'm spending working. And that's also the most, I think at this moment in time, it's the best thing I could do.
Mhm.
I would touch upon one topic, and you don't have to comment on this one. But like once every time I'm mentioning also that my dad is a
Mhm.
veteran, and my sister is still in the military. A lot of people, my colleagues are 90% men.
Mhm.
And I think for them, it's very interesting to ask me the question, so have you thought about joining the military? Well, obviously I did. I mean, like every
Mhm.
Ukrainian person I
Yeah,
speak to is thinking actively like,
I'm
uh,
looking for jobs in the military.
you are looking for jobs in
Well,
the
you
military.
gotta cope somehow.
I told you you don't have to comment at this one, but this just took a very interesting turn. Okay, I'll be brief. I'll try. And then I'm just like, well, hell yeah, of course. I mean, I would have loved, like this sense of also love for the people, your family that is 40 million big, and unfortunately, it's not 40 million anymore, right? Because
Mhm.
Russia has been very efficient
The-
at working on that. But I'm like, there's no like better way of, I think, expressing this love than saying I will protect you with maybe the risk of losing my own life, but I want to make sure that you can continue living on. And this is very much something I'm thinking about. Oh goodness, I hope I'm not gonna start getting emotional. But like to make it short, no, on the short term, I don't think I will be good use in the military. But in the long term perspective, depending on how my life looks like, right? I also have as I said, Dutch partner, and I cannot just like one day check out and say, hey, by the way, like
Bye,
bye.
tickets. Yeah.
Like, like, and I'm also trying to think like, is it like, do I have a realistic understanding of what it will look like for me?
Mhm.
Because I'm also getting, of course, like all kinds of the less glamorous parts of military service. So I'm like, yeah, of course. I think every Ukrainian thought about that. Like everyone who is over 18, almost 18, almost 60, 80. I don't know, like people of all ages and
Genders and religious beliefs.
backgrounds,
Yeah.
faiths for that matter. We have an extremely diverse armed forces. I think we have, Jews, Muslims, Christians, atheists, people belonging to all kinds of backgrounds. So everyone is fighting. It's like we have this saying that everyone everyone will fight, and everyone is fighting also in a way. Um, Jobs in the military. Please elaborate.
Um,
What's gonna be your next gig?
no, I suppose for me, right, the approach is slightly different. Or, I mean, I guess ultimately it does go towards the same goal, but maybe I don't approach it as rational as you do, right? Or um, because to me, that's. Um, Right, I mean, like even when you phrase like donations, right? There's one way to look at them and being like, okay, I helped this person, right? And like, here's my resources. Like, I want to do something with them. Like, what's a good thing to do? Like, I have something here, blah 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 blah. While I do a lot more. I mean, sometimes it's just rage donations, right? And
Oh yeah.
um, like with looking at the military jobs now, it's more of I am tired. Like I don't know how I can carry on for any longer, right? Like and let me, like hopefully I'll feel a bit better if I do join, right? I'm not saying sort of it's going to happen immediately, right? Or maybe I don't know, maybe I'll never commit to it at all. Um, but yeah, it's more of I don't know how to live otherwise, right? Um, I mean, if you want to compare it to something in kind of normal times, right? Then I think when people daydream about, buying a house somewhere on Azores, right, and moving away from all of this, I'm like, oh yeah, my daydreaming, just join the military.
Yeah. Whoa. But I like in a positive sense. You
No, no,
no, it's just it's an intrusive. Then it's an intrusive thought. But no, I understand what you mean, and I think right. It's also like where does this come from? It's not coming from the. Oh, I would really like. Sorry, but you don't make an impression of like this a guy like with a macho background
not
running
trying to.
around
Yeah, no, no,
and
no, no,
like running around with a rifle and saying, "Oh, now I'm cool. Now I'm cool." Like now I'm.
no, 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 no.
So for you, it's definitely like you're moved by the maybe like just the fact that we don't control anything in like our lives right now, like zero, like.
Yeah, I mean, and perhaps that's also a way to at least try to regain control over because, like, if we're now moving sort of timeline wise, right, from kind of the beginning of 2022, yes, and to the present day, where Ukraine is at large like subsided from the news, right, and even your friends are not checking in on you as often. They're like, "Hey, how you doing?" You're like, "Cool." Uh,
Yeah. Well, I'm glad people are not checking in on me as often. I mean, I like if I had like I am so thankful to every single person who did like in
mhm,
the first couple of days and weeks, but like by now I am like having troubles and answering my normal WhatsApp
mhm,
messages, streams, and I'm just like I'm actually like a lot more comfortable at the thought of sorry, I'm going to say this, but at the thought of someone spending their time thinking about me,
mhm.
like knowing that someone thought about me when they saw like a Ukrainian flag, or maybe they like hung a Ukrainian flag out of their window, which is like,
Mhm.
I think it's like much better. Because I also, what can you really,
Because in a way, right, that doesn't then give you the obligation of responding, right?
yeah,
Trying to come up with an answer.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, coming up with an answer is a pretty difficult one as well, right? Because that's also like one of the things, like at the beginning, I think a lot of people also were saying things like, oh, I hope like, it's going to be soon over. And uh,
yeah.
whichever way people meant this, by the way, because in a lot of cases they were like, oh well, maybe there's gonna be a peace treaty and you can just like surrender part of
Fuck that
the
so much.
um and now it's kind of because it's been 2 years, like everyone is pretty much disillusioned about that outcome, and people see like this First World War style warfare where
Hmm.
the front line is not really moving for months, which
Well, yeah.
you know yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
it has been moving not to our advantage, right? And then we were thinking about all of this, and we are like, yeah, it's also like the folks that care for us, like they also, like they probably would have loved to come to us and ask like, so what do you think is going to happen next, right? Like, and how is it going to go? And but if you think also objectively, like between 2022, I don't know, summer and now, like we've regained a lot of territory,
Yep.
right? So it's like it hasn't only been bad, but also because Ukraine is off the news. In a lot of cases, I hear things like, "Oh, has it been like? Is it better
Is it
now?
still going on?
Is it, or is it still going on?" Like, yeah, one of the things, like, if there's one thing
Mhm.
that our listeners can pick up from this podcast today, just one thing, that's probably like, not a good idea to ask if things are still going on. You can easily find news in Ukraine. I mean, attacks are there are blackouts in Ukraine, energy blackouts. Attacks on our critical energy
Infrastructure.
infrastructure are brutal. A lot of lives are lost as the result because there are people servicing these infrastructure objects. Russian precision missile strikes don't exist. They almost always hit civilians or just like humans of any
Just
kind.
anything, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's still awful, really, and we are just off the headlines because other awful things are going on in the world, which again is predictable. We knew it was going to happen, but if there's one thing you can take out of this podcast today, is probably that you should ask if it's still going on, because yeah, it probably is. Also, by the time we release these episodes, um, do you have other no-go tips?
Yeah, sort of. We hinted at like what you should and shouldn't do, right? And maybe now is a good time to come back to that. Remember when I said, right, that in the beginning, sort of what really helped was people just asking, "Hey, how can I help?" Right? And my answer was essentially, "Just I'm doing this thing. You can join in, right?" And
Yeah.
that was generally extremely helpful.
Why do you think it was helpful?
Well, I
What
guess,
and
right?
for whom was it helpful? Was it
Like, like
for you?
just for me emotionally, right?
Yeah.
But also this was the way, right? How I thought I was maximizing also my output, like modular emotional stuff. Um, and now to right, I guess my honest answer is, if you can join me in the things that I do, right, that's the greatest thing ever.
Yeah.
Which sort of in the like if you want to spend the least amount of money, right? Sorry, time, energy.
Oh.
Oops.
By the way, there's that fundraiser link at the bottom of the screen. No, I'm
uh,
sure there's not gonna be. Only to come back
um,
alive.
but yeah, sort of when people ask me, right, like sort of, hey, how's it going, right? And I'm like, well, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I spent half my salary in this, and then this is like a link to a fundraiser, right? And then they also say, yeah, I mean, I can't send money to this thing because my, I don't know, Dutch, German, whatever bank account is blocking transaction to Monobank. And can I just send it sort of to your PayPal and then you transfer? And I was like, yeah, I mean, and I genuinely feel cared for, right? I genuinely feel like connected to that person in that moment. Um, and these things can come prompted or unprompted, right? Like sometimes I put out an Instagram story and a friend of mine reaches out and says, yeah, so there's a right sort of face hands also with this thing. Do they accept yours? And I'm like, sure, dude, right? That's cool.
Yeah.
But it's even better when I just get a random message like referring to like something that I sent like months ago, right? And they say, hey, is this fundraiser still going on, right? And usually like there are a few that are kind of rolling, right? There's continuous needs. And I say yes, right? And I said, okay, cool. I sent some money there, right? And I like that almost makes me cry, because that is actively uh, helping, right, on one hand, but also that is a very concrete reflection of a thought, right? Like what you were mentioning, that you just want to know that someone thought of you, right? Someone put out a Ukrainian flag, right? That's the equivalent of that, right? Someone thought of you. Someone decided, okay, like I'll do my bit.
I see what you mean. I definitely see what you mean. And I also recognize that not everyone is going to have the financial means, right? So that's why this thought. I think this like, essentially like this brings me to another wild idea of like, is my family safe? Right. So it's 40 million people as per 24th of February 2022. But after that, I feel like my family has expanded even further. Like it will sound like, oh, like, all right, like sure, but the amount of people that are just supporting us without being Ukrainian or being related to Ukraine, and this pure, genuine, like decisiveness and like standing by our side no matter what, and not being like not falling for all this Russian propaganda, which by the way we're also going to have a wonderful episode about, like, oh, but Ukraine, they also have, like, no, like they don't have a single but, and like 2.5 years later they're still standing by our side. And that's where I went like, I think like this is the chance, like if we don't like mess this up and go into a full-on nuclear holocaust, which by the way is going to only become more probable if Russia does win in Ukraine. But if we're not going to destroy this humanity, I think we are, like, this was one of the precedents where it is truly about values and it's about kinship that goes beyond, like, which language you speak and where you're from, because it is all about, like, standing up in situations of pure evil, trying to just like go and become,
Even a greater
even
evil.
even bigger, right, at the cost of a sovereign nation. I think it's also a good moment to just also thank all those people that
Absolutely, yeah.
they might have never visited Ukraine, but they just do know what is right. And as I have probably also stated before, you barely, you don't really get a lot of examples in history where you can stand by someone's side as decisively, right? In terms of the war and conflict. So I'm thankful to those people for choosing the right things and the right side.
I
And
think especially now, right, when sort of years later, God, it's just feels so weird to say multiple years. But when you see governments slacking right and dragging their feet at providing help, like military help, and kind of just people standing up on their own, right, and then saying, "I can do my own bit."
yeah,
Um,
Slovakia. But also others, of course. Yeah, also others. I mean, I know that if there's
and I know Czech Republic bit, right, with the
artillery shells,
with Slovakia, what was
I
that?
think it was Slovakia.
I think it's Czech Republic.
I
Okay,
don't know.
we can
We'll
fact check
need to
later.
we'll need to do our homework for this one. But both countries, right? Because it's like they also have this um, clear history of resisting Russia and being oppressed by Russia, and the Prague Spring being crushed in like the most brutal way.
Mhm.
And I think the fact that, for example, Hungary, which is what
Oh yeah. Mhm.
1956, not that long ago, um, and where it's going right now. But then also there are so many people actually going taking the streets and opposing Orban, and you're like, that's what I like seeing. That's what I like seeing. It's even like so go out there, vote, protest,
For
especially
hell's sake,
protest.
please vote.
Yeah, please, please vote. Um,
Seeing the election results is terrifying, and I am like genuinely grateful to every person in the EU, right, and like in the world who went out and voted, uh, because that also feels like something that my life, the life of Ukrainians depends on, right?
yeah,
Which is also bizarre.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah, well, if you think about these things, probably we'll need another podcast for this as to why, right, that democracies are fragile and they need to be kept. Um, you know, they're imperfect, they're fragile, but they're also the best to date. Ways of societies to function without succumbing to fascism. So therefore, please do protect your democracy by voting, by educating yourself to the degree that
educating
it's
others,
possible. Sorry?
educating others.
Educate others. Yes, especially that. Um, what do we want to?
I think that was mostly do's, right? Do you want to also cover briefly don'ts?
I thought that we started doing the don'ts. Like, is it still going on? And I think that's a genuine question, right? Like, I think there are a lot of wars that also stretch through years. I mean,
Hmm.
I feel always really awful for Syrians because, like, I would have
Hmm.
probably asked a Syrian person, like, is it still going on? And like, so that's why, like, we are not mad at you, but like, probably it's good to do a little bit of homework. Other don'ts, I'm not sure. I think if in any way you're supporting Russia, like, if you're in any way are sympathizing with Russia and saying, yeah, I understand this war is really terrible, but Dostoevsky,
But
but Dostoevsky, I don't think it's like good. Like, don't dump that on Ukrainians. Like, you can have that discussion in the kitchen with your like in-laws and whatever.
if you met a Russian who you liked in your life, good for you. Like genuinely happy. Just
Yeah.
don't.
And this is not the time, this is not the place. Where
Weirdly, I mean, I think holidays feel odd, right? I think it was winter 2023 when I woke up, right, and there's a like you could count explosions going on in Kyiv like that morning, right, and then someone just told me Happy Merry Christmas. I'm
oh.
like, hey, what you? Thanks, yeah, I suppose.
Oh, yikes, yeah. Yeah,
But I mean,
holidays
and
are
I
weird.
understand, right? Sort of, you're not supposed to know everything, but I think the acknowledgement that my Christmas might be very different from
The
yours, right?
assumption that you are celebrating
Yeah,
Christmas,
yeah.
Donna, like,
Sure,
no,
yeah,
like,
also that.
happy holidays.
But no, I mean,
And
what I
I'm
mean is
just,
generally, right? So
uh,
if you just hatch that with, hey, sort of, I don't know how it's going on for you. I just wanted to say Merry Christmas. Hopefully, I know the coming days will be a bit better for you, right? That that makes me feel seen in a way, right? Because then I feel understood that I feel like you understand that. Yeah, I mean, we might be having different experiences these days, and
yeah.
I like if you can't do the other do that we mentioned, that where can I send the money, right? It's also fine
Or
to
you can also share it to your social media, the fundraiser link.
yes,
You don't
absolutely,
have to send the money if you don't
and
feel
also it doesn't really
comfortable
depend on the
financially.
amount, right? Like I feel warm and fuzzy regardless of how much.
I sometimes send €1 because I'm just so broke. I'm just like, oh, well, €1 it is, and then it's another €1 somewhere else, and so it goes until I get paid again. Uh, I think this is an important one. Maybe also getting like a bit too specific with that one, but I think if you just think about this whole experience we're going through the point of view of like normal things like family, at any random moment in time, like uh, if we are wearing all black, like don't like jokingly ask if someone died.
Oh,
That's also
jeez. Oh, fuck.
as like someone once did, and I was like, oh, luckily today nobody I know personally, but I'm
But I
pretty sure
almost,
someone did.
yeah, I mean, I barely got out of bed, and this is the thing I managed to put on. So can you please not?
Right? Yeah, I think around holidays it does get very difficult because we cannot be with our families. Also, a lot
I
of
mean, yeah, I guess sort of in a way, right? That's sorry.
no.
Finish
So
the thought.
a lot of colleagues also asked me at some point, well, like, what are your plans for Christmas? And I was like, in-laws, and I have in-laws, right? There are a lot of
Mhm.
people that are, they are completed by themselves. They just on their own, and they don't have anyone. They have their friends, maybe if they were lucky.
Yeah.
You were gonna add something to that.
I think I lost that thought. Yeah, maybe it'll come back to me.
We'll come back to you in a different episode. Yeah, I think generally, like, one thing I also want to maybe be wrapping up on this topic, but I certainly don't want people to tiptoe around things, right? So if you also know that, yeah, maybe today I'm having a worse day than average, you can also just say like, God, like, I don't even know, like, it's not something to be talked about, right? But I just saw it and I just wanted to say like, I saw it, you're on my mind. Not even like I understand that you probably will be sorry as you're saying this. I don't want people to tiptoe around things. I don't want them to also be thinking that they need a manual like before reaching out to me. But in a lot of cases, I think what matters to me is just the genuine desire to like continue being my friend, knowing that sometimes like I'm in a extremely like bad mood, and that bad could be also like all kinds of grief, emotions that span from grief to fury to anger that has nothing to do with you or anyone else.
Absolutely
like
not,
I'm
yeah.
hanging out with. So I think that's just the important context. But also I'm trying to be like, I'm always kind of trying to be my most genuine version of myself, which is like freaking cheerful by nature. Like I'm such a cheerful person by like pre full scale invasion. I'm also trying to like be very resilient because I'm also thinking like this personality was also to an extent stolen from you together with my life. And I'm also trying to reach to that like depth of like where it still is alive. So yeah, like people sometimes look at me and they're like, so is this like, because I saw that you posted something pretty appalling on your social media, like terrible things are happening, but like now I see you're smiling, and I'm like, yeah, and that is because as I'm going through this life, it also kind of passes by, and enough of it has already been stolen from me. So this is not fake. I'm not out of touch with reality. I'm not just like trying to get a little tear out of you while I'm myself having fun, but I'm just also saying, I refuse. Like, I'm so angry. I refuse to stop being my genuine self and like stop smiling. I don't know. What's your take on that?
No. So I was just thinking that, right. So you said that you don't want someone to approach you with a manual, right? And it is to an extent what we do now, right? Like giving you a manual. But fundamentally, I understand it's difficult, and I'm sure Karyna does too, that it is not easy being my friend these days. And like it's just hard to relate to this, right? It's hard to connect. But bottom line is, indeed, like, I don't want politeness. And if you now just don't feel much, that's all right.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate if you do, but also if you don't, I understand that you have other things going on in your life. And if you want to have a chat, right, just gently ask a question and be willing to hear, right, and not the shallow, hey, everything all right, right, and then I'm like, no, and we move on, right? No, like, if you want to have a conversation, let's have a conversation. If you'd rather it be like a passing note, hey, hope you're having a good day, then that's also fine.
Yeah, that's, I think, important also, that people don't feel forced that to ask something, and then like maybe they themselves, like, right, people around us are also going through things, and I recognize that not everyone is ready to maybe hear the full-on response. But okay, so that concludes us probably
Ranting?
On this note.
Yeah.
Ranting. I thought it was a pretty constructive rant. Like, I mean,
Trying my best here, yeah.
productive, fruitful rant. Hey, but before we do continue and move on, the foundation we mentioned, Come Back Alive, that is Back and Alive link. Please do support them, but do support us also with a like and
subscribe and bell and whatever else your platform does.
We're not sure where you're listening to this, but perform all these actions and stay tuned for the future episodes.
Yeah.
It was
appreciate
nice
listening.
Here.
Thank you.